our Ferris Fanny pack so long. We are going to finish it tonight, even if it takes us longer than a half hour. So yeah, so let's get to it. So this is where we ended up last time. We have our front pocket done. We have our top main pocket zippers sewn in. This is what the inside looks like. So now what we're going to do is we are going to sew the back on. We are going to sew the lining of the back on, and then we are, and we got to just do some side pieces before we do the back and the lining, and then we're going to do our strap. So let's get to it. So the next pieces that we need to sew are these little guys, and you're going to need the lining pieces. So now, the one thing I do not like about this pattern is that these pieces don't seem to fit well for the sides of the bag. So they're slightly off. So if you look here, when you turn it, it doesn't quite fit. I found that the large size was really didn't work well for these pattern pieces. They need to be redrafted by the company. We decided to still go ahead with the sew along because you get a really cute fanny pack at the end, even though the pattern pieces don't perfectly fit. Luckily, they're too big and not too small, because if they were too small, then they would really cause some problems. So yeah. So what we need to do is we need to line up these like this. And so I like to clip them. And then you need to put the lining underneath. Now I've left my zippers on. You can trim your zippers now, or you can trim them after you sew this. It's all personal preference. Sometimes I like to wait to trim the zipper, because then I know that I'm not gonna, I don't know, cut it too short or something. So I like to clip the exterior in place, and then I put the lining piece on the bottom, right sides together, and you're just matching. So again, I like to put the lining on the bottom because I find it shifts less if you are sewing with it on the bottom versus the exterior on the bottom and the lining on top. You're going to take it to your machine and you're going to sew a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance with a regular stitch length. So let me get going here. And you can sew right over that zipper, no problem. And then you're just going to fold it like this. So you can see here, in here, the piece is not the right size for the front piece. So that's okay, we can just adjust that after. So what I like to do then is just clip that lining and exterior fabric together, so it's just not flapping all over the place, and then we're going to do the other side. Now you're going to need to move your zipper pull out of the way, because you definitely don't want to run that over, and you need to just make sure that your triangle shaped piece is just in the middle, so you have the same amount of overhang on either side. And then I'm going to put my lining behind. Okay, so it looks like this, and I'm going to go sew that. Okay, so now I've got both of those side pieces on, and I'm just going to clip that. So like I said, I don't really iron it, I just kind of finger press it in place. And so now this is what it looks like. We got our two side pieces on. Okay, so now is when we actually get to use some of the hardware. So I'm just going to open up the hardware kit. So again, Sally Tomato has put together a hardware kit for this pattern. You get a slider, you get 2 swivel hooks, 1 inch both for these, and then you get some O-rings. So right now we need the O-rings. So you're going to take a piece of webbing if you're using the webbing, or there's a piece that you can cut from your exterior fabric that I think you cut it 10 inches. No, it's 5 inches long, and then you cut it in 2.5-inch segments, and then you use each of those for your connectors. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my scissors. So I have a piece of webbing. I'm going to just cut it down to 2.5 inches because that's what we need for each piece. Oh, I should have used my fabric scissors. I was using my non-fabric scissors. Okay, so you're going to take your O-ring and you're going to put either the webbing or the fabric through the strap connector through like this. Now you're going to take this and you're going to put it on this side piece, and you're going to put it right in the middle like this. And then you're going to pin or clip that in place. I like to clip because I find pins don't like to go through that bulk. And you're going to go to your machine and you are going to base that down at 1/4 inch. So it just stays in place. And you are going to do that on both sides. So I'm going to get my other one ready. There it is. So again, it looks like this. You're putting it in the middle of your piece like this. Sorry, that's kind of hard to see, but yeah. So in the middle. Oh, and make sure your lining piece is nicely aligned. You want it nice and straight, lined up with that straight edge, and you want it in the middle. And then you're just going to baste it in place. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to make a comment and I will answer them. Of course, if you have any questions after the video has been posted, we do check the comments regularly, so we will answer that after. So yeah, the video will probably be posted tomorrow or the day after, or most likely tomorrow once we're done tonight. Okay, so now we're going to take our back piece that has the fusible fleece on it, and we are going to baste it to our front. So right sides are together. So this is where those pieces that were not, it'll look like this. It's going to come out on the side. It's not going to match up nicely. That's okay. We can fudge it when we go to sew it together. So basically you're just going to pin all the way around or clip all the way around and just match it up as best as you can. And just make sure it's nice and centered, that most of your edges are meeting up. Oh, I'm throwing clips everywhere. They do tend to fly all over the place. So I like to pin the bottom and the sides first, and then I pin the top. The top has a bit of a curve to it, so it can be a bit annoying, for lack of a better word, to get it in place. So I like to wait until the end to do that. So for the top, you're going to have like this curved piece, and that's fine. You just need to make sure you're matching the top edges together like this. And so there is a little bit of a dip, and I'll show you in a minute. Sorry. Let me just pin a couple more clips. So you're just going to follow the top edge of that zipper piece like this. Now you see there's a bit of a dip here and a bit of a dip here. That's fine. You just want to make sure it matches up as best as possible. Now, this is also where, when we, okay, so we're going to baste the back to the front. And then we're going to sew the lining in place. And then we're going to flip it inside out. So we're going to birth the bag. And it's kind of fun. So this is where the size of the O-rings in the small size of the Ferris Fanny Pack can be a bit annoying because they are, let me grab the little one that I still haven't finished yet. Okay, so the O-rings need to sit here on the little one. And as you can see, it's quite tiny compared to the big one. So I'm going to use a D-ring here because as you can see, this is a 1-inch D-ring and it just fits in here with enough room for the seam allowance. If you're using the O-ring, it's an 1.5 inch O-ring, and so it's going to be quite big in here. And you're not going to have a lot of room on either side for the seam allowance. So when you're sewing, you're going to have to, through the lining or through the exterior fabric, push it aside. And that can be quite annoying and kind of fiddly when you're sewing. And to make sure that you don't catch that O-ring and break a needle. So that's why I've opted to do the D-ring for this size, because it just is fitting better, and it's very functional. It looks fine, so that's what I'm going to do. Now you're able to do the O-ring on the little size. You just will have a bit of trouble around this area when you're sewing it. One thing I completely forgot is you do want to have your zipper halfway open on this top part so that when you birth the bag, there's a spot for it to come out of. If it's closed, you're just going to have to jimmy it open. So once it's sewn. So yeah, this is what it's going to look like. So we've got, this is the inside of it. This is the back exterior, and we are going to baste all the way around with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, at the bottom here, so the instructions have you baste with a 1/4 inch all the way around, and then when you go to sew the lining on, it has you do 3/8 of an inch, which is the proper seam allowance, and you leave an opening here. So I found that when you do that and you flip it, and then you have to do this weird sewing part where you close the opening, and I really didn't like how they did it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do not a baste here when I'm doing this part, but I'm actual 3/8 of an inch seam allowance with regular stitches. It just helps close the bottom up properly. And then when we flip it after we've sewn the lining on, it works perfectly fine. So it's kind of hard to explain right now, but so right now we just have these pieces and we are basting them together. So I like to baste with the exterior on top, and I just start on a corner and just sew around. So you're going to be careful of your O-rings because they are in there and you don't want to catch it on a needle because that would not be good. So when I get to the spot where it's going to have the opening for turning, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my normal stitch length, and I'm going to do a normal seam allowance. Put that clip out of the way. Okay, and then I'm going to go back. So right now we're just basting. It doesn't have to be perfect. We basically are just wanting to get those two pieces sewn together so that when we go to sew the lining, things don't shift around too much. Because if you haven't basted this and you go to sew the lining, things can shift a lot and you don't want that. almost to the end. Okay. Okay, so now I've got it all basted together. And we are going to take the lining and we are going to put it on top, right sides together of the, not this part, but this part. So where you can see the lining inside. So basically we just want to match it up with everything. And I'm going to clip it in place. Now I'm also clipping it so it's on the bottom like I normally do, so that it doesn't shift around when I'm sewing it. So it moves better through the feed dogs. And basically you pin it the same way you pinned the back exterior, because it's the same piece. And make sure this is clipped all good. And flip it over just to make sure from the lining side that it's sitting nicely. You don't want it to have any bulges or anything. And doop. Okay, so, oh, one more clip. Okay, so the back looks like this. Now I've got the lining pinned or clipped in place. So when I'm sewing this, I am going to be leaving an opening from about here to here. This is just big enough. Sorry, my lining's not sitting nicely there. I want it to meet the edge. There, that's better. So I'm going to leave an opening from here to here, and that is big enough to birth the bag. So I'm going to take it to my machine, and now I'm going to sew with a regular stitch length, 2.5 millimeters at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay. Now you may need to shift your O-ring out of the way a little bit when you're going at the corners here, so that you can get that true 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Ooh. And we're just sewing around the bag. So I knocked all my clips everywhere. Okay, so here we go. So close to being done. Okay, so I'm going to back stitch here because I'm at the bottom of the bag. I'm going to cut my thread, and then I'm going to leave about 6 inches-ish. And then I'm going to back stitch again at the new spot where I started. Sometimes I start at the side of one opening and then I go around to the other, and then I don't have to like start stitching again. But I didn't do that this time. Okay, so now we have it all stitched around like this, and we have a hole right here. So to birth this bag, first of all though, we need to do some clipping. So there's still some spots here where you have some excess fabric. You can trim those off. I'm just gonna grab my fabric scissors. I have these amazing LDH scissors, and I got them from the store, and oh, they're so lovely. So I'm just gonna trim those pieces because that's extra bulk that you don't really need in there. And here. Now, what you also want to do is you want to trim your corners like so. So it looks, sorry, this light is not great, and I have a piece of fabric sticking out. So it looks like this. It just gives you less bulk in your corners. So do that on both sides. And that's really all that I trim. And I don't usually put any clips, like I don't clip anything here. So now we're gonna birth this. So I'm putting my hand in the hole right here, easier with my right hand. And I'm grabbing that zipper pocket opening and I'm pulling it out through the hole. So it's like we're birthing this bag. So we actually birth it twice. So you birth it to the lining and then you birth it so you can have the exterior. So here we are. We got it out like this. And then what we need to do is one more time pull it out through that pocket. So what I like to do is I like to reach inside and find the O-rings, open up the zipper more and start pulling on the O-ring, and it's gonna bring out that side. So here we are. Here's that O-ring. It's in there somewhere. There we go. There's the other one. And then you just turn it and you just use your hands and you smooth it all out. And look, there, you have a fanny pack and it's sewn for the most part. Look at that. Looks very professional, eh? Okay, so there is an opening in the bottom of this. So if you look inside, you have an opening there. So what I just do with this is I fold it over so the seam allowance is under, and I ladder stitch that close so it's an invisible closure. There's not gonna be a lot of stress there, so a ladder stitch or hand stitch is fine. You could use your machine if you want, but I prefer to do a hand stitch. And you know what's bad is sometimes I don't even close it, and I just am like, oh, it'll be fine. So yeah, what I do is usually I would, sorry, let me just get it to fold over nicely. So I fold it like a bit, this is super hard to see, but I fold it so the seam allowance is folded under, and then I slip stitch that closed right there. It's hard when it's not pressed. Give it a little press. And I slip stitch that close. Slip stitch or a ladder stitch. Okay, so there is our bag pretty much sewn. And look at that. It's great. Now, the last thing we need to do is do our straps. So I actually forgot to grab some webbing for this one. I didn't have enough. I just had a little bit left over. But I have some other webbing that I'm going to use. So if you have ever sewn a bra before, these straps are very similar to sewing a bra strap. They both have a slider, and instead of a swivel hook like we use for the webbing in the bag, you use a ring. So the first step that you're going to do is you're going to take your webbing and you're going to put it through your slider. So you're going from the wrong side of the slider through to the right side and then to the wrong side again. So it's going to look like this. And then what you do is you fold that edge down about this much. So it looks like this. So this is the wrong side of the slider. This is the right side of the slider. There's the wrong side. And you are going to take it to your machine and you are going to stitch it across here. I am going to not stitch at the moment because I don't have the right color of thread in there for this one. But so it's going to be stitched down along there. You are going to take your, where am I? I'm going to use this one. So it's very important that you make sure you put these in there correctly so that when you go to put it on your bag, you don't have a twisted strap. It happens quite often. So make sure that your slider is facing up. You're going to take one of your swivel hooks. Sorry, I'm just laying things out so I know what I'm doing here. And it needs to look like this. So you've got face up slider and you got your swivel hook like this. Okay. Now all the instructions are in the pattern as well. And so if you don't get this, it's there. So you've got it like this. And then what you're going to do is you are going to then feed the end that doesn't have anything on it through your slider. So you're going to go from the wrong side of your slider. You're going to go through that opening and then back through. So like this. Sorry, it's super hard to see. And then down through. Oh, if I can get it to go through. There we go. And it's going to be in a big loop now. I'm just going to pull it smaller so that you can see. So here we go. We have a loop. We have our slider. We have our swivel hook. And this is what they need to look like. And then what you're going to do with this free end that doesn't have anything on it is you're going to put it through your swivel hook. And you're going to sew the end down like you did with the slider. So you're going to take it to your machine and you're going to sew across here. And then you've made your strap. I am just going to clip this. Okay. So this is what your strap should look like. You should have your slider. It should be, your strap should be sewn right here near the slider. You'll have a swivel hook on there. And then you're going to have a swivel hook on the other end. Now, we gave you 1.5 meters of webbing in our kits. You may not need that much. If you're going to wear it as a true waistband or like a waist fanny pack, you will probably need a lot less, depending on your waist size. So I think for one of them, I cut it at 50 inches and it was still big. I mean, I don't have a small waist, but I don't have a huge waist either. And it found that it won't fit on my hips. It's too big. So if you're going to cut it as, use it as a waist fanny pack, then you might want to cut your webbing a little smaller. If you're using it more as a sling bag, I found 50 inches worked for me, but you may need a little bit more. That's why we gave everybody 60 inches, 1.5 meters. But you cut what works for you. Try it on, see how it works, and you can always, like if you just pin it in place, you can determine how much you need, and then cut the right amount and sew it from there. And yeah, so once you've got your strap made, you literally just hook it to, there's like little lobster claw thing here. Oh, this one's a tough one. It doesn't want to open. But you just clip it. You open that up and you put it through onto your hook or your O-ring like that. So yeah, you hook both sides and then you've got your fanny pack and that's it. Fairly easy. I think it looks really well for like how easy it is. It looks fairly professional. I love using zipper tape, and like zippers are not terribly difficult once you know how to do them. And yeah, so there you go. So that's our Ferris Fanny Pack sew along. So like I said, if you have any comments or questions, don't hesitate to leave a comment and we will respond to that in the next little bit. This video should be up on our YouTube page tomorrow or shortly after that. Yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed this. This is my first sew along, and I forgot to introduce myself again at the end of, or sorry, the beginning of this video. I'm Michelle, and I am the manager at Fabrications. This is my first sew along. I hope you've enjoyed it, and yeah, so I hope to be doing another one either August or September. We haven't quite pinned down a date. If there is a bag that you want to suggest for that, comment on this video and we'll take it into consideration. We're thinking about doing the Harlson by Noodlehead, which is a fanny pack type bag. It's really cool because it's got a nice square shape, but it's not too three-dimensional. Yeah, so it's pretty interesting, and it's got some fun closures on it. So we're thinking about putting together some kits for that. So if that's something that interests you, let us know. Or if there's another pattern, let us know, and we'll take it into consideration. So yeah, everyone have a good night, and I hope you enjoyed the sew along. Bye.